cutting-edge technology in the Indian marketplace. As we are all aware that COVID-19 has posted great challenges in supply chains and logistics across the world. And hence, I don't think there could have been a more befitting topic than today's one. And we have a very esteemed set of panelists who would take us through some important facts, figures, and we would have some very engaging and enriching discussions on the subject. And I'm sure the audience who have logged in today will be greatly benefited through the deliberations during the virtual seminar. But before I hand it over to our moderator for today's afternoon, I just thought if I could introduce the dignitaries, the panelists for today's afternoon. I have with me Mr. Alex Klein, who is the Director of Sales and Expansion and lead of WTech. I have with me Mr. Prashant Trivedi, co-founder and CCO of BotSync. We have Mr. Rahul Nambiar, co-founder and CEO of BotSync. And of course, Mr. Wolfgang, who is the operating partner, industrial innovation partner for the Anchor Group, and the moderator for today's session. So I think without wasting much time, I would straight away hand it over to Mr. Wolfgang to take the proceedings from here and present us a very, very enriching and engaging session. But before you start, Mr. Wolfgang, a small request to all the attendees is whatever questions, queries, clarifications that you have, please type it out on the chat box or on the Q&A section. And once the deliberations and the presentations are over, we will have the open forum where we'll take up all your questions and our esteemed panelists will be more than happy to answer them. Over to you, Mr. Wolfgang.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opening words. And yeah, I'm very pleased to have that opportunity to discuss, in fact, the broader topic of supply chains, smart buildings, and digitization and automation in the world. And we all know that COVID-19 has significantly accelerated the development. Why is this important topic for myself? Because I have spent and dedicated my career to supply chain expansion, digitization, and I'm happy that there are at least some good things that came out of COVID-19, and the acceleration of digitization is definitely one good development. So I have been working at international organizations like the World Economic Forum, where I was heading the supply chain and transport industries group. And I was also the president and CEO of Geopost Intercontinental, the global expansion and investment vehicle of French La Poste. And in that context, in fact, in both roles, I had the pleasure and privilege to visit India several times, and I saw the continuous progress, and I think we will discuss this today as well. I also would like to talk a moment about Anchor and why Anchor is hosting this discussion, because Anchor is about accelerating open innovation and venturing. And Anchor has, in its almost 15 years of history, helped a lot of companies to get into the Indian market, but also Indian companies to get into for example, Europe. Anchor is a cross-border investment and corporate development firm operating out of 3 countries, Switzerland, India, and I'm running this session here out of Hong Kong. Our team combines over 40 years of M&A investment and operational experience, and we work with our investors and clients on defining industry and investment priorities, evaluating innovation, and helping companies to grow into digital industry leaders. And all this is based on the experience that there is a gap between the companies that innovate and the incumbents. Of course, there are also some who are incumbents and who innovate strongly. But we would say that this is more a marginal group. So what is that gap which we have identified? On the one hand are the innovators that have all the space and all the freedom to drive their ideas and to convert their ideas into solutions. But they are lacking resources, and they're also lacking the market knowledge. And that brings us to the incumbents. The incumbents have exactly that. They have industry knowledge and they have resources. So Anchor believes bringing that together is a very powerful formula and helps the incumbents to run their digital transformation and helps the innovators to scale. But to get there, one needs to understand both sides of the market, or both sides, the innovators and the incumbents. And this is where Anchor comes in. And we are having mainly 3 areas, 3 ways how we can bring the things together. We ourselves are investing in technology and companies that are relevant for India, that can benefit from the Indian development that I was speaking about, and that can bring new technology to India, which on the other hand helps Indian companies to become more competitive. And for that, we offer Indian companies, but also companies abroad, to invest in a joint investment fund dedicated to a certain step and component in the value chain. But if companies would like to do it on themselves, on their own, this is also an area where we help. We can set up a customized portfolio, an own accelerator, an own investment vehicle where the incumbent sets, or the investor sets the rules, and we are helping to set the objectives and to implement the selection and provide portfolio management and development support. And then there is a third way. We are also expanding the capacity and the capabilities of incumbents, of investors, and help them with their investments in whatever way necessary, but also to find new investments, and that through market mapping, screening, market intelligence, etc. And we have done this for a lot of companies, and if somebody is interested, please contact us. So this sets the scene for what we are discussing today, because we have innovators on our panel, and the panel is about digitalization. It is about bringing capabilities to the supply chain or to buildings which are deemed necessary at that point. And we hear now regularly that supply chain disruption may pose a bigger challenge to GDP than COVID-19, but we all know that both are of course linked and connected. We also hear that COVID-19 is not the biggest crisis which we are facing, but that there are other crises coming up, like the climate change and environmental threats that will challenge us again. And then people talk about air pollution and the health risks that come with this. And all what I have mentioned now is important for the discussion which we are going to have. And I would like to hand over to Alex, and he will talk about a bit about his company and the solution, which is about Internet of Things and sensors and what you can do with this. Alex, over to you.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Thank you very much. And again, thank you, ICC, for inviting us and letting us have this wonderful session with so many guests attending. I'm going to jump over to a short presentation, give you a quick overview of WTech. WTech is the company that I work for. My name is Alex Klein. I'm one of the directors of the company. My main role is running sales, business development, and expanding into different areas of the world. Our company is focused on making buildings as efficient as possible. So as Wolfgang said, we are looking at a fine mesh sensor network that collects real-time data that can deliver energy efficiency in all sorts of ways into buildings. A brief overview of our company. Actually, the technology has been around for now almost 10 years. We've deployed successfully over 500 projects in the world. And our headquarters is in Frankfurt, Germany. We also have an office in Silicon Valley, California. So we call ourselves a German-American company because that's kind of where the technology originated. But also, as you can see, one of our core markets is India, where we've been successfully deploying projects over the past 6 years and are looking obviously to making India one of our core markets, because we do truly believe that our technology can offer a lot of value in terms of energy efficiency and real key issues that are arising all over the world. But we see India as a great growth market and a key element of driving real climate change and real change in the world. So that's why we want to focus more and drive more our business into that direction. Some of the factors you see here, we are talking real numbers about energy savings in terms of CO2 emissions that we can reduce, and we can deliver many lead points. So it's accredited, it's tested and certified that our technology can deliver these numbers truly on a project-to-project basis. I wanted to go in quickly into some of the digital megatrends that we're looking at. So megatrends that drive the demand for technology are urbanization, future of work, and sustainability. And we as a technology fit into the PoE lighting market. So what that means is driving LED fixtures through IT infrastructure. I'll go into that in a little bit after. But essentially, you don't need electrical infrastructure anymore. You drive LEDs over data infrastructure, just as we've seen the change in telephones from ring bus infrastructure to PoE IP-based telephones. And so more and more things in a building move actually to the IT infrastructure, and we take lighting on that same path. So how do we address these challenges with our technology? So the urbanization aspect, right? Reduce operating costs, gain insights of building use, really get an insight based on data on how a building is operated and occupied at all times in real time. Then the future of work is becoming more and more flexible, right? So you need to see, okay, which spaces are open, which spaces are currently occupied. How can we maybe change the environment? How can we make it more flexible? Create spaces for people to really want to go to work instead of kind of working from home. And then obviously sustainability, key factor, reducing CO2 emissions and making sure that we don't use more energy that we really need. Another key element is ESG factors, right? That's something that we see all over the map at the moment. So environmental, social, and governance, that kind of ties directly into the megatrends that we've seen prior. Really true connection between, okay, what does the world need? What do people want? And what can technology deliver at the moment? And that's what brings us to a more human-centric approach, right? Through our technology, we can truly deliver a human-centric office. So creating spaces where people are feeling comfortable, are feeling safe, can work productivity with highest productivity. And so we have all these sensor capabilities that we put into buildings in order to make sure that we have all the data necessary to, on one hand, create the most energy efficient building possible, and on the other hand, deliver a building that's as comfortable for the occupants as possible. Just a quick insight on our infrastructure. I mentioned we use IT infrastructure, so standard IT infrastructure, running cables, Cat cables to the building, connecting to sensors and light fixtures that don't have a driver anymore. It's just plug and play, essentially low voltage components. And the key element here is the smart director that shares that data openly with other systems through open interfaces in order to make other things like HVAC systems, for example, more intelligent and more efficient in the building as well. And then just to give you an insight on kind of our establishment in India so far, we do have employees based out of India for business development, sales, project management. We also work with local partners, but obviously that's something where we want to grow as well. All these cities you see here are cities where we have projects deployed already. So we're very experienced. We have a good reference basis in the country. But obviously, like I mentioned before, we want to really grow this market and focus on it because we see it as a really key market for the future and moving forward. Just some project examples here. These are some large corporations that we work with, right? Large banks or IT companies. And we do have, like I said, the reference sites that we can show, and we have the experience, and we can really truly use that as a basis to take on more and more projects in India. And yeah, that's essentially it from my side. I'm looking forward to questions later. But yeah, I'm going to hand over back to Wolfgang from here. Hopefully I didn't take too much time.
Alex, thank you so much for the insightful presentation. You speak about energy savings. What about health aspects of a building, for example, filters, temperature management, etc.?
Yeah, so essentially the beauty of the system is that we collect all this data in real time, right? And the data, what I mean by data is really truly elements of all sorts of things that happen in a building. So we have occupancy data with temperature data, but as you said, well-being factors, air quality, so CO2, VOC, volatile organic compounds, are measures or data that we collect in real time. And that data then is used and shared with, for example, a ventilation system in real time. So as soon as there is a value that is below a certain threshold, let's say that CO2 level is too high, that system gets triggered and said, okay, there's a CO2 level is critical. We need to increase the airflow into the building, the fresh airflow. And that's one of the real important factors in terms of current situations, but on all well-being factors in the building.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Alex. I can imagine that that becomes a very important point when we think about the big cities and the pollution we are facing there. So we will come back to WTAC later and the solution. I would like now to ask Prashant to talk about automation. Automation in logistics warehouses, but also in factories, whether it is electronics or automotive. And I'm very curious to learn how the bots are getting into the world of Indian manufacturing and logistics. Over to you, Prashant.
Yep, nice. Thank you, Wolfgang. I'll head on to my presentation as well. So, let me know if you're able to see my screen. So, you're able to view the presentation slides, right?
All perfect, Prashant.
Yeah, I think thanks, Wolfgang. So I'm Prashant, and one of the co-founders and commercial officer at BotSync. And at BotSync, we essentially are helping companies and by providing automation solution for internal logistics movement of in warehouses and production plants and factory spaces. So that's a simple one-liner, and I'll go into a bit more detail about the individual aspects of our solution. But a bit about the company is that we are headquartered in Singapore, but we are production and engineering offices in Bangalore in India. And now, of course, late this year onwards and next year, we are looking at aggressively India to serve Indian market because we are so excited by the sheer volume and potential in India market. As a company, we develop robotics and autonomous robots end to end. So full robotics stack, the software stack, and the engineering design and the assembly is all controlled and developed by ourselves. So which gives us a lot more potential for us to customize and optimize for different use cases and requirements of our customers, and hence add a lot more stronger value add in our solution and provide a much better service to our customers. We have an extensive sort of background in terms of technical, but also industry experts who are helping us to always advise us onto the market fit as we expand within Southeast Asia and India. And lastly, the area where we look at the part of operations in factory floors and warehouses we look at is anything within the capacity or loads of 300 to 1500 kg of material movement is what we are able to help companies automate. So that's a bit about the company, and I'll jump into about actually our value proposition and what we do. Right? So we help companies essentially to provide and to ensure like zero downtime, and this is a very critical factors in factories and warehouses. 24/7 factories, as what Wolfgang mentioned about an automotive or textile plants, every second matters, and we have to ensure like the take time is always within the targeted, otherwise it affects their production capacity. So with our solution, companies are able to achieve and ensure that that process is not compromised at all, and every second is basically as much as possible saved so that they can improve their throughput with at least automation. A lot of companies, even with our solution, they gain a lot more competitive advantage in their respective industries by adopting the first of a kind. I mean, at least in Indian market, I mean, the kind of technology which we're providing is we are one of the early ones which provide full automated solution for our robots, which requires zero infrastructure change. So with this, companies are able to actually gain a lot more competitive advantage within their industries and attract a lot more businesses for themselves. Lastly, automation has to provide a cost savings and cost benefits. So while it is about innovation and also about having gaining competitive advantage, but the long-term cost savings is what we look at for all our projects and what we deliver and we provide to our customers as well. So we understand the benefits and provide a detailed ROI analysis of what they can expect in the next 7 to 10 years as savings for them. So these are key main value propositions of a solution to our customers. And now if I go about what some of the case studies and how we are delivering such value proposition is. So recently for one of our Thailand project, an automotive plant, we are helping, so a fleet of about 6 to 8 robots are helping actually for them to automate their shop floor processes, which is as a result helping them to achieve 1 car output every 2 minutes, 24/7. So in the second case where and across a major 3PL, we actually helped them to increase operational efficiency by up to 67%. I'm primarily looking at understanding their current processes and also then coming up and redefining the process along with the automation so that it's much more efficient for them. And at a very one of the regional DCs as a warehouse, we are helping actually the company to almost have cost reduction of up to 47% at a 24/7 DC, which serves the whole region. So as you can see, like these are numbers which are proving that automation is actually there to drive cost savings and helping them to achieve a lot more efficiency within their operations. So why we are excited about India? Very simple facts is that there are over 2.2 million manufacturing sites in India, and these are one of the highest in this region as a country. And what we see is robot density in India, which is still at 0.03%, which is in the region is still at one of the lower rates. So if we look at these two numbers, it's clear that India will grow as a market, and India will grow in terms of what they can produce, and hence to keep with that demand, robot density will naturally be going higher. So we want to be one of the key providers here to bridge this gap and to ensure that we are helping companies to adopt automation and make their operations a bit more efficient. And to accelerate this adoption, one of the key unique things which we are looking at within India and to offer is, of course, CapEx model has always been the traditional ones. And what we are driving towards is more as a RaaS model, where companies look at least adopting automation in our solution and a lot more without thinking or without having too many doubts, because when it becomes as a service model, it's a lot more easier for them to always get started with their journey, and that's how we are planning to actually accelerate this adoption within India. Lastly, what are the right steps towards automation? We always have to identify right processes, and this is where we help a lot with our companies and our customers. We help them to see which processes are actually more critical to which to start with for automation. Cost benefit analysis. It's a very close. We work very closely with our customers' operations teams, and to understand exactly to the dollar and cents as to what they can expect in the next 7-10 years by adopting automation. And so it's more quantitative analysis than just pure qualitative. And lastly, I think what we always also advise for a lot of our first timers who are adopting automation is it's always good to always have a phase implementation. So while the first step can be quick, but first step will also be extensive for us to work closely with them and make sure like this automation is actually helping and truly adding a strong value, and then expand it over the time. And with that, Yeah, I'll actually, that was a brief summary of our solution and how we look at India, and feel free to reach out to us actually for any of our queries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prashant. Very, very impressive. And we will double and triple down on some of the things you have said. In terms of interest, because it all starts with interest of an industry, how does India compare to, for example, you mentioned Thailand? Is there this? Thailand has automotive industry like India. Is there the same level of interest? Is it a bit lower? Is it higher? How would you rate that?
Right. So India, I mean, just recently as well, now that in last 2-3 months, we have actually started looking a lot more aggressively, and 2020 plan is very aggressive India expansion for us. But as what you rightly mentioned, like within industries, like automotive, for example, even Thailand, the interest level in automotive industry in India is actually very high as well. Primarily because they are so much process driven, so they understand the value add of automation immediately. So which is good to see within industry to industry. Yeah. And then of course there are certain other ones within India. For example, now we are also having projects confirmations with textile. So so this is good to see that the interest within certain industries is a lot more higher, and those will be the early adopters, I believe.
Thank you very much, Prashant. Another question, just out of curiosity, what motivated you to put the assembly and engineering into Bangalore?
Right. I mean, for us, because it was always, there were two reasons, I guess. One is always that we wanted to have this capacity to scale our own production, and which we found strategically, like India was as a much better option for us, primarily because, I mean, Singapore, we have certain limitations, and India would give us a lot of freedom. And we have a lot more support and just capability and ease of basically finding resources as well, and very strategic location here as well, because here we see India as a market as well. So it's much easier to drive the deployments as well from here.
And as I know, you're also looking for manufacturing partners in India. So the journey has not reached its end.
Oh, yep. I mean, yes, we are just getting started. So yeah, definitely looking out for a lot of key partners.
Alex, you are currently or not yet producing in India. Any thoughts about it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're currently still manufacturing completely in Europe. But when we look at scalability and economies of scale, I think we definitely see India as a key manufacturing hub that could drive kind of our growth in a completely different way. So we have started already looking at potential manufacturing sites in India to use the expertise that is in the manufacturing industry in India, and kind of also use the know-how, and obviously also the market approach that would change tremendously if we manufacture, or when we manufacture in India. So that's certainly something that's on our roadmap, and where we're also looking at manufacturing partners to work with in the future.
Yeah, that brings me to the highest level you can, let's say, start a discussion in India, which is the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has launched the Make in India program. You are operating in India for quite some time. What was the impact, and how does Make in India help you and fits what you're doing or not?
I think so. It kind of has just given us the opportunity to start looking more at local manufacturing partners, right? I mean, India has always been on our map in terms of manufacturing, because, like I said, the expertise is tremendous there, and the know-how, and the supply chain. And so definitely an area that we looked at, but with the Make in India, which I think is a very good way to get an economy growing. I mean, we have in Germany, Made in Germany, I think is a global brand. And so Make in India does make a lot of sense, since there's a lot of manufacturing experience there. So if anything, it just helped us push a little bit more towards India and kind of look for local partners that we can work with in order to create a product that truly fits the market.
Yeah, and I would like also to put the same question in front of the BotSync co-founders, whether it's Rahul or Prashant. But what are your thoughts on Make in India and the impact on what you are thinking about India, on doing in India?
Maybe I can take this one. I mean, a few things for us. When we shifted our manufacturing from Singapore to India last year, actually 2019. And I think the long-term objective really is to utilize the support that the government is sending as well, as part of this initiative to scale up our manufacturing, working together with partners. On another aspect as well, what we have started to observe is, because of this initiative, companies are starting to look at their manufacturing process a lot more closely, which is the kind of customers we work with. So both from our own production processes and our long-term objective as a company to expand production within India, I think it also opens a lot of opportunity for us to work with manufacturing companies within India looking to upgrade and expand the capacity. I think especially with companies looking to move manufacturing from China to different places, India is a very viable opportunity. I think that's something which certain companies in India are looking to capture. And we want to be part of that journey to support those companies in upgrading their processes. They can start increasing capacity, improving efficiency, and so on. So yeah, to summarize, both from our own perspective of improving our production process, scaling our production, as well as supporting companies in this space, increase the production efficiency, I feel we're aligned on both fronts.
Yeah, you made a point on companies that could benefit from automation. What are the companies, the type of companies, the profiles that should talk with companies like you and think about robotics? Because India is traditionally a labor-intensive country. What are the early signals companies should look at to say, okay, the time has come to move from manual to an automated process?
Yeah, I think great question. There's a few ways to I think look at this particularly. What we've observed is I think working with not just India but in Southeast Asia in general, where labor costs are equivalent, is facilities operating 24/7, who are 24/7 operations running in their plants, tend to be the first ones to move into automation, primarily because firstly, they need to maintain continuity across all three shifts. That means they're hiring 3 resources on a daily basis to fulfill that business process. So I think these are the companies which will be the ones that drive the implementation of automation. And eventually, as GDP per capita grows in each economy, then the remaining other operations catch up. So I would say that I think Prashant mentioned a few as well: automotive, electronics, FMCG, textiles, where there's 24/7 plants operating at high capacity on a daily basis, high throughput, high efficiency. They have that continuity as a big concern for themselves. They have targets to meet. They need to operate 3 shifts. They need to maintain continuity. I think those fall into the ideal segments to start with. Those companies have a clear need. It's not just cost reduction, but it's also maintaining continuity. So that would be the first segment, which would be the first movers in the space in any economy. And that's what we've observed across the board. They will be the first movers implementing automation, implementing process improvements. And then the others would follow soon as eventually the labor cost in each economy picks up. Wolfgang, I believe you're on.
You're speaking a lot about manufacturing. Is that your focus in India, or are you having plans in the logistics sector too?
Yeah, I think I'll answer the question. We looked at this space. I think the factory for logistic process is something we wanted to start with. I think going back to the main objective about they have clear processes already in place. They have continuity requirements where they operate 3 shifts. So that forms a good segment to start for us to start with because the process is standardized. But I believe logistics is also something that will soon be something we look at a lot more closely. I think it's just as a company, we had to choose where we would focus the resources for the first short-term period and then eventually long-term. But I believe there's massive potential first start with manufacturing, but definitely with logistics thereafter.
Thank you, Rahul. Alex, almost every company, at least in the old economy, has a building. What are the companies you are working with? What are the type of buildings that are more interesting for the type of solution you are offering? And what are maybe buildings where this is less relevant?
Yeah, so we have kind of on our growth trajectory, we have 2 main building types that we have focused on so far, and that is office buildings, so large-scale office buildings and data centers. And historically speaking, those are the areas where we've had most success, but also because we focus on those areas. So certainly those 2 types of buildings are something that we're looking for, and in India specifically, office buildings, large-scale office buildings is something that we have done and have accelerated in and have successfully deployed. But we also see a good value of the technology in areas like healthcare and education. So we've done a lot of university buildings as well in the United States. We've done healthcare facilities in Great Britain. So I guess those areas are the focus areas. Some building types that we don't really go into as much are manufacturing facilities, or like large storage facilities, stuff like that, where there's not as much turnover, where there's not as many people maybe running around, and also just by pure building type, building shape, it's usually very high bay building types, so that's not something that we really look into. We really want to focus on areas where the data can deliver the most value, and that's office buildings and data centers.
And are there, I saw the map of India.
Yeah.
Are there specific regions which are more interested in exploring the smart building opportunities, or is this across India?
We do see kind of Bangalore as a key city for technology. I mean, all the technology companies in the world, I think, have an office, or some of them even their headquarters in Bangalore. So that's an area where we definitely have a lot of projects coming up as well, and have deployed successfully in the past. But those technology companies then move across India as well. So we do have big technology parks in Hyderabad, in Mumbai, in Pune. So I guess it's just a matter of time when the expansion of companies reach other cities. And then usually the way it works with our technology is once a company decides to go with our technology and they see how it works and they see the value that they get with the technology, they tend to implement it in other locations as well. So one of the companies that we work with globally has installations in India, in Singapore, in the UK, in the US, in Germany. So pretty much creating a smart building standard, if you want so, in India, which is quite impressive. A lot of the technology companies actually look at India as their first location to deploy smart building standards because of the technology, the openness to new technology. And so once that is established, they take this formula and then deploy it as a global standard, which is quite interesting to see.
That's an interesting statement. Do you perceive India as particularly open to new technology?
Yes, definitely. I mean, in our experience, India has been at the forefront of new technology for years, and is very, very open to trying out new technologies, to really taking a leap kind of over the steps, some of the steps that maybe European and US countries have done, and kind of taken, okay, why do we need to take all these baby steps? Why don't we go right to the edge of the technology where we are right now? And that willingness and openness to do that, I've seen only in India. I've not seen anywhere else in the world, and that's extremely impressive. And it shows that India is really a market that will grow and to succeed many countries in the world.
Rahul, Prashant, does that resonate with you?
Okay, I think I can take this as well. Yeah, I think likewise. I think what we have seen from working with early customers is the open-mindedness, I think, to try and explore together. And what we also appreciate is the fact that companies look at this as a partnership and not just as a vendor-customer relationship. So I think especially for automation, it's not very easy to be a supplier of products which a company uses. It ends up being a partnership where both parties explore how it needs to be deployed. And what we've seen so far is that companies are willing to take that step and look at that process and identify how they can adapt certain processes based on suggestions from us, and how we can also make sure our products fit into their requirements. So yeah, I think absolutely, completely agreed as well. I think the effort is there, companies are willing, and they're keen to take it as a long journey.
And a follow-up question. Time seems to be a very critical element in your world, and related to your solution, to the BotSync solution. How long does it usually take from a first discussion to having the first robot on site?
Great question. Typically, I think what we are kind of aligned internally as a team is automation is about process implementation. So we're basically helping vendors optimize or improve a process and complement the workforce in that environment. So I think we spend a good amount of time after confirmation of projects, first with a pilot engagement. This is how we operate. We do a simple pilot, basically to iron out those wrinkles, and in terms of how the process works. How does the automation operate together with the operators on the ground, and how do they interact with the bots? I think that is a key component. So we spend about a month and a half on site with the pilot unit, essentially to work out these principles. I think that is when it becomes a lot more straightforward to implement. So I would say first 2 months to identify from a high level process implementation, what is the economics, what is the efficiency, etc. Probably a month-long pilot on site to understand the specifics, iron out the wrinkles, get this detail sorted out on the ground. So I think a 3-month process would be good, especially if customers trying for the first time. And they can go to a phase implementation approach. Phase 1, maybe 3 to 5 bots before scaling up significantly. So yeah, I think that's a rough breakdown of how we work with each customer.
And you can start with only one bot, right?
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. I mean, the main thing we wanted to have is, as a company, we wanted to help customers going through this adoption for the first time, have something which is a lot more flexible and robust. So can start with one bot, get a good feel of it, of the products, how it works, before adding more bots. And the best part is the implementation process does not change. If you put one bot there during the pilot and you want to scale to multiple bots, there's not a lot of additional setup involved. And that is what we offer as a value proposition, apart from the process optimization for customers we work with.
Super. Alex, similar question to you. How long does it take to equip a building or to make a building smarter?
You gotta specify between 2 different types. One thing would be a new construction, one thing would be a renovation of a building, right? So there's kind of time difference there. But one thing that we do also like about India a lot is that the building processes are much quicker than in other countries. So when we talk about projects in Germany that might take 2 or 3 years from kind of the design stage to the final stage of a tenant moving into a building, that is very, very much densed down in India, where we look at project cycles from 6 to maybe 12 months instead of 2-3 years. So usually when we go from a design stage, so the first kind of idea of, okay, we're going to have a new building, to a tenant actually moving in India, we usually look at about 6 to 12 months implementation time, which is extremely fast.
And what are the do's and don'ts when making a building smart or thinking about it?
Well, one of the things we always say is, if you think about creating a building today, you shouldn't implement anything that doesn't work 5, 10, 20 years from now, right? So if you even think about having a vision of maybe having a smart building 5 years down the road, then you should put the base infrastructure into the building to make sure that you can do it in 5 years, even if you build the building next year, right? And we see the movement to IP-based communication infrastructure in buildings being the future, right? I mean, we've seen it with cell phone infrastructure, we've seen it with telephone infrastructure, we've seen it with more and more things in a building move into for us, it's extremely clear that IP is the communication platform and infrastructure of smart buildings. So the main do is, if you plan out a smart building, plan it out so that things in the building can actually communicate with each other over IP, because that is the current standard, and that will become more and more the standard of things communicating with each other in the building. The worst thing you can do is putting in proprietary systems that are not open, that are not upgradable, that are just once they're installed, that's the way they are, and they can't be changed. And that's in the flexible environment that we're working in these days would be the biggest do not from my perspective.
Yeah, I would like to pose a devil's advocate question, but maybe you have the answer. We are also in an area of significant decentralization. So everything will be closer to us, right? Our home became a much more central piece, will be closer to markets, will be smaller. We need flexibilities. Are you thinking about including, let's say, the work from home or the life from home into your concepts?
I would say currently that's not really on our roadmap, because we do tend to focus on just large scale commercial buildings. We do have, we do see the homes of people as kind of the private space. And so it's not really an area that we've focused on a lot. We do see, from an energy perspective, definitely a lot of advantages to look into that market going forward. But we also see that the home office is there, and we believe that it will stick around. But we do truly believe that there will not be the end of an office space somewhere where people will meet and communicate and collaborate. So I think the move will be more to hybrid solutions. And so if you have a space that you feel comfortable in at home, and we make the space that you can go to and work productively, collaboratively with your colleagues, I think we've created a space where people want to go and see benefit of going. And I think that's what our job is now, to create spaces where people actually want to go outside of their home to meet and work with their colleagues.
Yeah, Alex, I think you're right. There is a lot of room to grow for a company like yours. On the other hand, the world is changing and changing rapidly, and that brings new opportunities. Maybe it's to be seen more from a, let's say, communication, integration, and holistic concept point of view with new opportunities than as a threat. Rahul and Prashant, bots are with us for many, many years, maybe 60, 70, 80. So it started in the 50s in the US, if I'm not misinformed. So what is the new thing, and why do we need new bots? And how can also customers, manufacturers, logistics companies navigate that jungle of broad solutions that are on the market? Can you give some advice there without pushing botsing too hard here?
Yeah, I think interestingly, I've been looking at this number of late, just been tracking the correlation between GDP per capita and the robot density. And it's interesting to observe what the trends look like. I think Southeast Asia in general, the density is about 3 robots for every 10,000 workers. And you have Singapore, which is at 900 robots for 10,000 workers. So there's a wide, I think the market is still not fully mature yet. I think it's still growing, ever growing. And the reason being is as the initial robots, I believe, I think one of the ones which I used to refer to was the Kiva Robotic Systems by Amazon. When it came out, it was one of its kind, became very particularly suited to e-commerce applications, eventually got acquired by Amazon itself and became in-house, became Amazon Robotics. So I think that created a new segment of automation, which is e-commerce fulfillment. And I think what is happening now is, as more and more companies are exploring automation, I think they're identifying new use cases, and that warrants a need for more and more different kinds of products. So I feel like our kind of technology, autonomous mobile robots which use natural navigation, were identified as a way to address heavy case movement in collaborative environments, because the collaborative environments eventually start looking at automation. And I feel even the most automated country today is only at a 9% automation rate, and eventually it is going to increase significantly. And I feel as the density goes up further and further, there's definitely going to be more use cases which keep opening up, which today there are no solutions. So I feel it is a very exciting market in the sense that we're still, even though it's been around for almost 50 years now, I feel it's still a lot of years ahead where multiple different use cases can be adapted. I think a simple metric would be our space, autonomous mobile robots, and the kind of use cases it can be deployed. Today, the penetration globally is only 1.5%. That means there are millions of other facilities where this can be deployed into. And that's only going to move the automation density overall to probably about 10, 11%. So yeah, I think we solve one particular use case. And I think there will be other companies which solve other particular use cases. So customers do have to understand what process works for them and work with each vendor to understand how that could be fit in.
Yeah, what I heard was that robotics is a very fragmented market. It's because of these enormous number of use cases. So you have a lot of specialized robots. So that might be a part of the answer why automation is still relatively low. From a futuristic point of view, how much automation do you think is possible? Some people dream of 100% automation, and others say we will probably always live in a hybrid model overall. What is your vision?
Yeah, I think for sure. I do believe in a hybrid. So I think there are two aspects to this, and what I believe the future of an automated warehouse is going to look like. One, I don't think we'll ever be in a position, at least for the foreseeable 50 to 150 years, it's unlikely it's going to be completely human-free. I think automation was introduced as a way to complement and improve worker productivity. And I think eventually there will be maybe 85% of the tasks, like moving heavy materials, picking operations, which will be done by robotic systems. So I think the idea is that as long as it's a repeatable process, it can be automated. Anything which requires constant decision making is something which humans and people are better suited to do. So I feel like in the next 50 years, it's unlikely we can have robotic systems replace all of it. I think a very simple example would be if a truck comes in with pallets, it's unlikely we'll have a robot able to unload the pallet, unload all that is in the truck in the next 15, 20 years, considering the complexity there is. The second vision or the way I look at the long-term future is, like you said, eventually it's going to be multiple robotic systems in the same warehouse and same warehouse, same factory. And I think that's how these facilities will be operating. And I think the important thing in the future would be, I think Asia is in a very early stage, but this is happening in the US, is how the interoperability of the systems will eventually operate. How will robot company A's products work with robot companies B's products to provide actual end-to-end efficiency for an operator. So I think those are the two things I believe in. I think eventually that's where we will be in 50 years. Multiple different companies in the same facility, having interoperability standards to coordinate them, and having key personnel in those facilities to control and coordinate those robotic systems.
Yeah, that would also make it easier for the companies. So they don't need to marry with one provider, at least for a specific area. They could use multiple hardware provider under one digital platform, for example. And the same question to you, Alex. We are talking here about two major revolutions. The one is the automation revolution, and that is where Botzing sits. And then there is the data revolution. That's where WTech sits. So how is your vision in terms of the role of data in the world in the next, let's say, 25, I spoke about 50 years. Pick your horizon.
Yeah. Well, I think data has become already a core element of everyone's lives, right? I mean, it's with the cell phone, with the smartphone in everyone's pocket. Essentially, data is a key element of how we go about our day, right? I mean, it is now normal to look at your phone, look at Google Maps and see, okay, how busy is the bus? The next one that's coming, should I take the next one? Same thing is for maybe a restaurant that you want to go to. You get information already based on data on how occupied a space is and how maybe full a space is. And so data has become part of our everyday lives. And I think with technologies like Smart Engine, we will take this kind of data approach inside of a building, right? And so I believe on a let's say not just Smart Engine scale, but on a global scale, I think data is the key to energy efficiency. It's the key to productivity. It's the key to making things run as smoothly as possible. And that starts maybe with a cell phone that can be in your home, like smart home applications. It can be in the office with all sorts of data, real-time data that you can have. But it really becomes a bigger picture when we talk about smart cities in the future, because connectivity plays more and more of a role, right? So things need to be able to communicate with each other. And that's where especially the IoT industry has a lot of work to do, because currently it's all about collecting data, but not really creating value. And so what I sometimes tend to say it's more at the moment the internet of nothing, because everyone collects data, but nobody talks to each other about it. And not everyone needs to collect data. Everyone needs to have their role. And if there's data available, then that data should be available for somebody that can use it. And so the real challenge now is to have everything starting from a small space to a city or even a country. I mean, we have companies benchmarking buildings' performance against each other globally already. So that's I think the challenge and the role of data in the future is really connecting things and making data available and making sure that every participant in the system can have access to data that is collected to make them run more efficiently and more smoothly and really truly create benefits all around.
Thanks, Alex. IoT, Internet of Things data is often linked to digital twinning. Is that term somehow relevant in your solution, or don't you use that as a way to explain what you're doing?
I would say it doesn't have a direct connection to our technology, but I think the term digital twin will be very useful in terms of, I mean, when we look at construction phases of buildings, when we look at creating really a truly digital model of buildings, it's quite helpful to have an understanding of how a building is built and what things are in the building. And that is not necessarily just smart technology. That can be a door or a wall or a chair. So when you create digital twin, it is really truly beneficial in terms of having oversight of everything that is placed into a building. And then that basis allows for many digital applications to be built on a digital twin, which is tremendously helpful when we're looking at creating software applications for a building if there's already a digital twin model that we can base the application on. And so, yes, their digital twin does have a connection in some capacity, but I wouldn't say it's like as direct connected to IoT. It's more like a basis that then multiple applications can have access to.
Oh, super. Yeah, we could also speak about the Internet of Things, right? And how that relates. A lot of terms, which in fact does not make it easier for the people, right? What am I buying, a digital twin, an Internet of Things, an IoT solution, or something else? Very quick question, which is related to the world of digitization, cybersecurity. You're in business for quite some time. You feel comfortable? Any recommendations, advice to give to the people to be safe?
Yes, I mean, cybersecurity is a main threat, I think, or like not having a secure system is a threat. And especially from the IoT market, the more IoT devices that you put into your building, actually it does tend to open up more gates for intruders to get into the system, the more devices you have connected to the system. So it's really, really important to look into the devices and their security protocols that they're using before placing them into your building. And that's, I guess, another big do not do is do not place things that don't use the highest security protocols into your building, because it opens up a gate for intruders. And do look for secure systems to be placed into your system. And actually, with our system, that's one area that we focus on quite a lot, and that's why we received as one of the first building technology is actually the BOS accreditation from Google's BOS certification system, security certification system, because they tested our cybersecurity standards and actually ranked them the highest. And so we are part of the Google BOS certification in terms of security systems. But yeah, in general, it's a big area, and IoT is a big gate and for things to, or for intruders to get through. So it's really important to focus on that area and make sure that the highest security protocols are used.
Thank you, Alex. Also to the BotSync team, there are these apocalyptic ideas that suddenly the bots get under the control of people, get hijacked, and do strange things in your factory. What are your words of wisdom on the topic?
Yeah, I think for sure something for us it's quite important as well. I mean, typically what we do now is we try to avoid moving this to the cloud. So a lot of our early customers, I think they have, basically we have an completely bound network within that facility, which means that there's no risk of it being penetrated from outside of that facility. So that is one way we have been looking at this, to make sure the data is safe within that particular facility. But I think eventually now, as WMS systems are also going to the cloud, we would also have to start integrating with the cloud systems. And this is something on our roadmap as well, to provide better predictive maintenance services to our customers. So I think, like Alex said, we're taking this quite seriously and going through all the norms and regulations to make sure that it's safe and the data is secure before we actually open this up to the cloud. But for now, I think for early customers, most of our systems are on-premise, which means it's blocked off from outside interaction and only be accessed on-premise. But yeah, I think definitely something I agree with. The last thing we would want is the bots being taken over.
Yeah, and to round the discussion up, and as we are coming to an end, and we as Anchor, of course, we're working with WTech and we work with BotSync. Don't want to leave that below the carpet. I would like to ask the two companies to make a short pitch to Indian potential partners. So what are your partners you're looking at, and what do you bring to India and the Indian companies which should motivate them to call you? And I leave it up to the two teams to decide where to start, when to start, who to start.
I think since I'm unmuted, I can go first maybe. I think maybe I guess I'll just go back to Alex's statement earlier. I think companies need to think a bit long term. So even if it is not an immediate requirement, I think especially in terms of automation, digitalization, it takes some time to plan this ahead of time. So if the idea is to do this 5 years, 10 years ahead, it's a good step to start this today, some form or the other, thinking of how to look at this. And I think as like the Make in India program has created opportunities globally for Indian companies to take use of. And I think automation, digitalization are ways to get ahead of other markets and other economies and get an edge over that, providing state-of-the-art services to customers globally. So finally, I think the main gist is need to think long-term and utilize the opportunity which is available globally today to step up operational efficiency and provide global best quality products. And yeah, I think that's just a few words from my side.
Yeah, then I can finish with some words as well. Essentially, mindful use of resources, I think, is a good thing for everybody, right? So that is something that we all need to look at on how we can be more mindful with resources that we have available. And so essentially, when we look at our technology and kind of the types of partners that we look forward to or that we need essentially in our business, there's multiple stages or multiple kind of ways that you can look at it. One area is customers, in the sense of okay, we are planning or building a new building that we want to move into, and we want to make that building energy efficient and smart. That's one partner that we're obviously looking forward to, because that's essentially somebody that we can help design and build an energy efficient smart building. Another area is technology partners, right? We're always looking to partner up with technology companies in order to maybe have third-party app joint ventures or things like that, where we can truly work together on new solutions for our system. The third area would be like manufacturing partners, right? We talked about Make in India earlier. That's certainly an area that is on our roadmap where we want to move into. So if there's manufacturing sites or manufacturing experts, we are open for discussions in that area. And then the last area that we'll look into is investors, right? We are still very much a growing business. And so we are looking, especially also in the Indian market, for partners that we can grow with. And so strategic investor partners, essentially for the Indian market, is something that we're also looking forward to. But yeah, anyone that wants to make the world a little bit more energy efficient and intelligent, we're open for discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Prashant and Rahul. And I think the type of partners WTech is looking for are similar to those Botzing is also speaking at the moment. And I really thank you for sharing that openly, your views on the technology, on the future, and on India. And now we are moving to the Q&A.
Thank you, Mr. Wolfgang, and to all our panelists. I think we've had a very, very engaging session, as we had thought. A lot of views on the technology for the future, and specifically how India is going to benefit from this technology advancement. Now, the floor is open. I think, as I had mentioned earlier, we are open to take questions from the audience. And I was just informed by my colleague in the IT team that anybody who wants to be heard by the panelists, you can raise your hand, and accordingly, you will be given access to speak. So that facility is also available. So in case there are any questions, we can take them right away. Otherwise, I'm sure there was quite a lot of interactive discussions, clarifications on various points among the panelists, and so wonderfully moderated by our moderator today. I'm sure most of the points have been covered. So I would only request, in case our panelists could type out their email ID on the chat box, because post going through this session, there could be, queries afterwards, there could be thoughts afterwards. So if anybody from the audience would want to be in touch, have some clarifications, I would give them that privilege to mail you and request the panelists if they could mail back with their answers. So maybe a quick typing of the emails on the chat box may be really helpful for the benefit of everybody. Is there any issues from any of the panelists in terms of typing out the email IDs? Please feel free to let us know. I think all the panelists are muted. Yeah, Mr. Clean, if you have anything to tell me.
you want us to write out our email addresses or
Right.
just in the chat area?
Okay.
I'll put that in there.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. So I think, the audience might want to be in touch with you post this session. So we would only urge you to maybe, get back with the clarifications. So I think that brings us to the end of this wonderful session on the cutting edge technology in the Indian marketplace. And we have had, as I mentioned, a lot of interesting discussions, ideas, views, sharing of experiences on the subject by our esteemed panelists. And now is the time when I need to convey my sincere thanks to the anchor group, to BotSync and WTech for their partnership. My sincere thanks goes out to all the panelists, starting with our moderator, Mr. Wolfgang, Mr. Prashant Trivedi, Mr. Rahul Nambiar, Mr. Alex Clean, and of course, a very special thanks to Mr. Raghav Kanoria, who has been a source of inspiration and a great help and support in organizing this program today. So on behalf of Indian Chamber of Commerce, let me thank all of you for sharing your views, sparing your precious time, and be with us and help audience understand more about this very important subject. So that brings us to the close of today's webinar. Thank you very much. Please stay safe